I don't really know how to feel planted when we're not talking about albums anymore. It's hard for me to find the through line. It's hard for me to feel like I know an artist on a deep level.
That's it. Well, I read a lot, so a lot of it's like a book. Like you can read a chapter of a book and put it down, but you're not going to really get to know the author and what they were trying to tell you with that book unless you read the book.
Mm-hmm.
You got to get to those chapters, and that book lives in that moment in time. You can pull it off the shelf 20 years from now, and I think that's kind of what an album. I still think it works. I still think that this is an interesting nuance where technology has got involved with music, but I think over time we're going to find a real desire from a consumer to get back to what those albums are. I love to be able to go listen to artists that I'm a fan of.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell, all you got to do is play me that song, and I know what album that's from, if they're my favorite artist, because they made albums that were from a time frame that were cohesive. And that's a piece of work, and that's a piece of art, and that was a moment in time. And I love that, not all the songs work on that. I mean, you can't tell me that the Rolling Stones or the Beatles didn't have 10 other massive hit songs that they could have put on, Sgt. Pepper's, but it didn't fit what that was. And I think that to me is something that's always intrigued me about music, and I'm not interested in doing it if I can't do that.
So I'm going to jump in on some specific songs.
Okay.
Bleed on Paper is just, for me, is like, this is the why, right?
Yeah.
This is like how we all showed up here.
Yep.
And I love it so much. I love that you chose to cut it even though you didn't write it.
Yep.
In this song, there's this lyric where the singer is at the crossroads with the man in the suit and the tie who's like, essentially making a deal with the devil or the man or whoever, right?
Yeah.
Were there those crossroads for you where you had to like kind of find that fortitude and say no to the opportunity?
Yeah. Biggest time for me in my career was we had the Carolina album. Things weren't going great. I had put out 2 songs that I thought were what the label wanted me to put out. But what was happening for me at the time, and those songs were Love Your Love the Most and Hell on the Heart.
Yep. I love both of the songs.
Yeah. But what was happening at the time for me is I was playing rock clubs, and I had on sunglasses, and we were playing 11 o'clock at night, and it was rowdier and different. And then I would go into the label, and they wanted what they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a song on that album called Smoke a Little Smoke, and people were climbing the walls every night. I had to close the show with it. And I remember going to the label. We had a top 10 hit on Love Your Love, a top 10 hit on Hell on the Heart, and I couldn't tell the difference. And I remember going in and...
With the audience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. With the career. I just couldn't tell the difference.
Yeah.
We were no better than we were before we did it,
Wow.
Even though you had a couple top 10 hits, it just didn't seem to matter. I couldn't find the matter. So I went in, came off the road. And at that time, I think Capitol Records was thinking about, I know they were. They were thinking about, this is not working. I think they were going to drop me. What I love about labels is, and I love this particular individual, but it's always we, and until it's not. Mm-hmm. And I remember he said, so what are you going to do? Oh. Mm-hmm. I said, I'm going to release Smoke a Little Smoke. We were going back and forth negotiating. And I finally said, listen, I know where this is headed, and if we don't put this song out, let's just get it over with now. I'm never going to cut another song. I'm done. Mm-hmm. And I remember he had his little reader glasses, and he took them off, and he kind of I could tell he was thinking, and he was flipping them around. We were at a restaurant, and he was frustrated, I could tell, and he kind of flipped them at me, and I remember they bounced one time, and they kind of hit me. I called him, and he goes, okay, but it's your funeral. And I said, okay. And we put out Smoke a Little Smoke, and everything changed. But what I found that the trust level that we had after that that's why the rest of the career did the way it did. There were other times later in the career where we did some things that I'm sure he was thinking, I'm sure the label was thinking no, but he said no. We're gonna trust him here because you earned it. And I'd been out there, and I said, listen, I'm the one out there, so I'll see it. I'm watching every night. I'm playing 6 shows a week. I'm playing Amarillo on a Monday night. I'm playing everywhere. So I was getting to see something that they in Nashville weren't getting to see. And once we, proved that, then from then on out, we had a lot of rope, and I used all of it. But we had a lot of rope to work with.
Let's talk about the song Johnny. I love a song that picks up kind of somewhere that we've left off in the musical canon.
Yeah.
So that's just fun.
Yeah.
But so this has me thinking about the title of the album, Evangeline versus the Machine. There's this machine reference early in the Johnny lyric. Just talk to me about
Well,
that.
Johnny was interesting because, and I've told this story before, but the Covenant shooting happened, and the hardest thing I've ever done in my life as a parent was dropping my kids off the day after the shooting. They went to school, and everybody thought it was good to go back to school and get the kids, and I understood that.
Yeah.
But that's the hardest thing I've ever done.
Every parent in Nashville
Everyone
said the same thing.
Yep. Hardest thing.
Hardest thing.
I've watched them walk into school a lot, but that day was different. And I sat in the parking lot a while. I didn't really know what to do. I just kind of thought I should be there because you just don't. I sat in that parking lot probably an hour, and then I finally I was about to drive back home, and we live pretty close to where our kids go to school, but we only live about 1.5 miles from Covenant. And Devil Went Down to Georgia came on, and it was in the background. It was on whatever was on. And it wasn't something I was overly paying attention to. I was thinking, I was in my thoughts. But there's that line that Johnny rosin up your bow and play your fiddle hard. Hell's broke loose in Georgia, and the devil deals the cards. And if he wins, he gets a fine, shiny fiddle made of gold. If he loses, the devil gets your soul. And I remember that line hit, and I was like, God, we need Johnny because the devil's not in Georgia. He's here. He's everywhere. And he's winning. And I just remember thinking that as I walked in my house. And I went and got a guitar, and I just started playing on that Johnny theme of we need Johnny to come back. And that's where the song started. And then there's the line in the start of it, as you were referencing about, now machines control the people and the people shoot at kids. And, and that was before we ever had Evangeline versus the Machine as a title. We let kind of the songs dictate that. But this was very early on in the process. But I just remember that being an emotion that, in an emotional song that I'll never forget that moment of when that was born.
Yeah. Where are you with faith in this season of your life? Like, are you feeling this epic battle between like good and evil? And do you have a sense of who wins or what your role is in it?
Yeah. I mean, I have a very good sense of who wins. I know who wins, but I think that good and evil has always been, that's the story of the world. There's always been that. You go back to biblical times, you go back before. It's the same thing. The devil walks the earth and he wreaks havoc anywhere he can, And there's always this good versus evil element of everything we do. I think music has that. I think for me, being able to acknowledge that is kind of your job as a songwriter. And, you let people, you report where you are and where your emotions are, and you hope that lines up with where their emotions are. And I think that's faith's a big part of my life, and it's a big part of, always been a part of my life. And I think just the belief that, and for me, the most powerful thing about music is we can disagree on everything. We can disagree on politics, we can disagree, but music is the one thing where it's like kind of a safe space where I've seen people at shows that generally shouldn't like each other at all, but when you play a certain song, they'll both put their arm around each other and hold a beer up in the air. And I think that's what's powerful about music. I think it's a great uniter in a world that's pretty divided.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what I love about music. So I think using music as an element of good is something that's redemptive in being able to pick up a guitar and do that.